Just because you're thinking blonde, you know. And that's just a reflection of our own thoughts. But they've had such a time with their hair, such a time of this superimposed superiority, inferiority set of conditions that much of the time black women couldn't do anything about. You know, they could do absolutely nothing about the fact that this white woman kept shaking her head in black women's faces, and everybody, poets and song, raved about blue eyes and blonde hair. You know, nobody was talking about the brunette, even in the European sector, and certainly not until Jeannie with the light brown eyes did the eyes even become a comparative between blonde. You know? But again, that's cultural psychology, and we have certainly been caught up in it and given one of the biggest doses of psychological poisoning of any other group of people. They tramped on the Chinese and the Japanese, but they didn't lose their cultural ties. Language, symbology, and this close identity with each other's face. I want you to be sure and zoom in on this so they can see this zodiac clock of destiny concept there, because we've been talking about it for the last 5-6 years, and it's not on anybody's book but C.M. Bay's. Good evening. My name is Gemini Sagittarius, and my address is 112936. Do you speak astrology? A whole area of thinking is what the science of astrology really is. It is 12 different ways to know yourself and the 12 people that live on planet Earth. A way to view the activity of your past, present, and your future. A way of understanding the possibilities of your victory on planet Earth. A science that verifies that you were born to win. And the unfortunate fact is many, I won't say most anymore, many of our children, our relatives, and our friends and associates do not know that they were born to win. That the universe does not create losers. It only creates winners. The gates of competition have been broadened and glamorized so that the human race can digest this fact. It keeps illustrating and demonstrating. If you wonder why so much sports are playing such a dynamic part in the daily and annual activity of human life, to keep telling everyone you're playing a game and you have the ability to win, and winning brings glory, riches, and honor. When that concept gets into the consciousness of a human being, they go looking for their opportunity with the desire to win. At that point, one begins to mature. Astrology is seen from many points of view, and it's important that the idea of science be illuminated when discussing the subject. We're not talking about mundane science. It is not the same science as chemistry, biology, architecture, or any other of the mundane science. It is a metaphysical science. Meta meaning above or and mental. Essentially, of that which is invisible, examining and explaining that which is visible. Those who are considered and have been for generations and eons and ages to be wise and knowledgeable, illumined, saintly, divine, and powerful, understood the laws that govern the universe, the laws that govern human behavior, and that governs the mind that we live, move, and have our being in. That is not Jesus. To the dismay of all the good Christians, it is a universal field of energy that has no personality, form, or individuated character, but contains all that exists on the three-dimensional plane of existence. That is the mother, Zodicaius. We'll get back to that. What I'm doing today is introducing this course on the science of astrology and what it is, what we're going to look at it's going to take more than 12 weeks to get this done if I'm going to be proficient in it, but we're going to start with a 12-week course in looking at the knowledge of self, the knowledge of God, and the knowledge of the universe. And we want to understand that this knowledge comes from the one universal language that's spoken from one end of planet Earth to the other. And that language is symbology, the universal language of divine mind as reflected in manifested nature. And I should have my apple here now, but I don't. If you want to examine the reality of symbology and its context, you first can just look at the five-pointed fish. You can look at the Macintosh apple, which comes out of Washington, D.C., I understand. Slice it laterally and open it up. And this is the arrangement you will see in perfect geometric symmetry. A five-pointed star inside of an apple. And this apple represents, or the star of it represents, man in his dramatic stance, arms extended like this, arm, leg, arm, head. Did anybody hear that? What I said? Okay. That's important to know because we're going to climb over the boundaries of religion into the universal religion, the religion of knowledge, the religion of wisdom, that allows us to grow and expand with whatever spirit one receives. So your religion takes a back seat when you're in search of the unity of the faith towards the knowledge of the Son of God to the measure of the fullness of the statue of Christ. That's what this is. The unity of the faith is the oneness of Photius. Self-confidence is what faith really means. And without it, you can't get from here back to your car. And you can't get up out of the bed if you have no confidence in yourself. And there are those days when our lives demonstrate that in an experience. We get so depressed, so outworn by the horrendous circumstances, we don't want to get up out of the bed. I know I've had it. I put $20 on the number one day. And I had the real number in the back of my head. It wouldn't play it. Took $20 straight on the number. And the number in the back of my head came out. I was sick. I mean, literally, I got ill in my solar plexus. I couldn't get out of bed the next day, because I only had about $25 that day, but I was so sure about this number. But our psychology can beat us to the point where we become really, and when you're psychologically defeated, you're really defeated. Someone can tie you up, bind your foot and hands. It don't mean shit. If you can get your adrenaline flowing, you can break that loose. But when they tie up your key, they tie up master. The great harm of slavery is they stopped us here. The great harm. The rest of it is all secondary to the mind thing. For the unity of the faith to the knowledge of the Son of God. That's what we see here, and I'm supposed to bring the other illustration. I have a picture of the Sphinx, which is earmarked to almost the exact center of land mass. Not the center of the earth, land mass. Okay? Because most of the surface of the earth is covered by water, not by earth. Most of the earth is underwater on planet Earth. But land mass, the Sphinx, which is the image of a black man. Of course, I know you all know that. And if you don't, all you do is take out the dollar bill. You've been carrying it around. Everybody talks about the portraits of Washington, Grant, and Lincoln and so forth. They never talk about the image that's on the other side of the dollar bill because they don't reflect and correlate the pyramid with the Sphinx, but they're juxtaposed within the same landmass. I mean, but until you're into the knowledge, then when you pick up a dollar, you start seeing yourself and the knowledge of yourself on that one piece of paper where those symbols are only on the dollar bill. Towards the knowledge of the Son of God, to the measure of the fullness of the stature of Christ. This represents the physical, the perfect body. This is a perfect measured building that has, according to Peter Tompkins and other quote, and I put that in quote, Egyptologist, has all of the mathematical measurements on planet Earth. All the knowledge of math is in the pyramid of Giza. The perfect man is given in terms of the circle and the square. When one is standing on the square, they're standing in the position of one who has mastered himself. You can watch out. This brother here got married. He was standing, listening to the ceremony. He was standing like this at first, and the brother who was marrying him said something, and his right foot went out like this. I don't even know if he knew it or not, but I was, watching. Did you know it? All right, okay. I mean, sometimes we do things subconscious that relate where we are in our development. You see a human being with his hand here. He's about to express wisdom. The solar plexus represents wisdom. When someone grabs you and says, "Oh, my stomach hurts," it means he needs some more wisdom. The stomach ain't down here. His stomach is up here. This is the colon, the small and large intestinal tract. Okay. ISLAM is not a religion. That's a code. These are English words, not Arabic letters. Those are English letters. Okay. And one thing we need to understand about all languages, all written forms of languages are symbols of thought. When you write something, you cannot write the language. You write the representation of what you're thinking, what you're saying, and what you mean. That's all letters are. That's all characters are. That's all hieroglyphics are. And all languages can be shown begin from the, quote, so-called Egyptian hieroglyphic form of writing. So-called because Egypt is not a legitimate Egyptian word. Okay, we're going to spray and sprinkle the science of astrology with Moorish science for those of you who have not had the opportunity to attend in any of the classes or lectures on Moorish science. The star, the moon, and the sun are what we are talking about as power, energy, and intelligence. The measure of the fullness of the statue of Christ is seen in the square of the pyramid at Giza at the base. It is squared perfectly at the base. When the length of the latitude equals the length of the longitude, you have a square. Okay? You have directions: north, south, east, and west. You also have the 4 cardinal points of measure. This is the science of your ancestors as navigators demonstrated most handsomely day and recorded in Europe, though they had been demonstrating navigational abilities long before they went to Europe, as well as afterwards. That's how they got from Africa to the Americas, as Ivan Van Sertima reports in his book, They Came Before Columbus. Any of you brothers had a chance to read that? You have? Very good. I like this brother. He's in college, but he ain't letting it interfere with his cultural education, which is important. And I often wonder if the sisters at Spelman are doing likewise. I suppose many of them are. I'm more willing to give credit now in 96 to the psychological expedience of many black youth towards knowledge of self, because it's been released. Many are listening and many are not. Fortunately, some are. We're going to talk about each one of us as an individual from a degree point of view, that you were born at a specific time in space, in a specific place, in time and space and circumstances. That's really your address. Okay. And your spiritual name at this point is found in your 30 degrees as a symbolic representation. Okay? Keep that in mind. A symbolic representation. The reason I said what I said earlier when I started is to fascinate you and at the same time give you another perspective of who you are and identity. You're also your first name, or your name as you have it on your birth certificate. There's a whole science dealing with that called the science of numerology. But I want you to look at this. What does that word say? Brother there. Signation. Right. No, you said it right first. Okay? That's what we're doing with symbology, with names and birth data. We sign nature. And the reason that's in the dictionary, because the one who brought the vocabulary to the Western Hemisphere was a son of his mother. What did I just say? It's amazing. All right. Let them respond. We know you know there's more. He wants to show off. Okay? Noah, Daniel Webster, was a high potentate. They sent him to America. They sent Masons to this country to start and finish revolution. They talk about the Minutemen. It wasn't them. It was the Massine who sat back in closed doors and plotted and planned to take this land away from the jurisdiction of the Queen of England. Okay? And they did it with the knowledge of the Moors, which is now called Masonic, at least in many quarters. Some of it is just ritual, which we'll touch on in the course of these 12 weeks. If you study in 12 weeks, you will not be the same human being you were and are today. I guarantee you that. This is the knowledge that touches the mind. And that's the definition of teach. I'm not lecturing. When I start telling you the truth about yourself, your spirit and your soul consciousness will respond, and it will change your perspective about you and the people in your world. That's what true knowledge does. That's the difference between the spiritual path and the religious path. In religion you hear about Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha or Moses, whatever branch you might foster in. Of course, they're always better than we are. And none of them said that. Okay? But in order to get down on your knees to worship someone, that someone has to be better than you, or you can't get down on your knees. You see? And in the real of knowledge, you're not. You're only supposed to bow to your mother, you see, who is responsible for your creation day. I was supposed to say that. The Masons, when they write, they said, I was created on. They don't say I was born on. I was created on. Because they were born in 9 months. We all know there are 9 planets in our solar system to this particular date of the knowledge recorded. The reality is, in theory now, it'll be fact maybe 20 years from now, maybe sooner, that there are 12 planets in this solar system. But we're not getting the energy, and we're not responding to those other planets. We're responding to the 9. Actually, we're only responding to 7 planets. The sun is not a planet, and the moon is a luminary. Is a luminary that reflects energy more than it gives off energy. But it has to have some energy, otherwise it couldn't stay up there. Energy keeps everything in existence. I've heard someone say it's a dead planet. Well, if it was dead, it would fall apart. As we see anything else that loses the life force, disintegrates, and the moon is not disintegrating. But it reflects the light and energy of the moon. 12 signs represents, or is represented on and by what we all know and adhere to with more faith than we do our, that's a terrible circle, more than we do our any other symbolic format, is the clock. Astrology represents nature's clock. Why it is referred to in Moorish science as the clock of destiny. And the interesting factor here, on this particular chart, there's a black woman in the center of the circle. In I don't know why that name, I guess I'm trying to forget it, where this chart came from. There's a white woman in the circle, because that's their mama. But the reality of this particular symbol does not represent a person, but represents the mother universe, Zodikaios, which means circle of animals, so recorded in, now don't write that down, circle of animals as so recorded in the Greek dictionary. And it does not, there are no animals in the sky. Those are circles of power. Okay, but in the symbolic representation, because what the ancients did was inscribe these concepts in part animal form and part human and part symbolic. That's where the concept of animal comes from in relationship to what's in the constellational panorama that we view partially at night, and how the concept became so inscribed in the education system, particularly by the astronomer who in approximately 1929, 1928 is when they began trying to find some reason for what was going to happen. The stock market crash, you recall, in history, happened in 1929, and big wigs, the super rich. I mean, if you had $1 million in 1929, you were super rich. Like now, brother got $1 million. Hell, he's still nervous. Jumped out of windows, blew their brains out, poisoned themselves because they lost their money in the stock market. And in the background were this small group of people all over the country who were trying to tell folks, look, something is going to happen in the stock market and it's going to fall. Some did withdraw their shares, their money, and sold their shares, the wise ones, and most of them did not. So after it fell, before this time, astrologers and astronomers were almost synonymous. There was credibility among both, even in the same schools. It was after this fall of this big money thing that almost ruined this country that the astronomers turned viciously on astrology and went out with a witch hunt. They're the ones that caused it. So they told us not only that they called it that was the devil, and they literally broke into some of their stores and offices and went after them with sticks and clubs. I mean, that's how ignorant. Even this was the quote so-called upper crust of folks. This wasn't the working man. The working man didn't have no damn stock, except a few. These are folks with the ties and cane and the gloves in the hand, acting like the barbarians. But that was the big divorce between these two schools of thought. And since then, and only up to recently, has astrology and astronomy almost made friends. They really aren't back in the same area. But the school of thought is there. The big hand and the small hand on the clock of destiny would be these two planets. And the 12 numbers on the clock are and would be the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's a perspective we're going to keep throughout this whole 12 weeks so that you can relate this to something you see every day. And the 8 planets, because most astrologers include the moon as planetarial, and virtually is not, but that's nitpicking. The 8 planets are the other hands on this clock, because those are the things that keep moving. The zodiac belt is not real. It is imagined. In fact, the truth of Mathematica is that all Mathematica is imaginary. The distance from here to the door of that particular store across there can be imagined. You can figure it out in your imagination. The whole factor of measuring is imagination. Yes.
So you said mathematics.
Mathematica, the Latin word, means astrologer. Arithmetica means the art of counting.
So mathematics
means astrologer, the ones who measure the distance between planets and people. Is where your ancestors and what your ancestors used this developed, evolved system over millennia. Nobody in any of these books give you a specific date and time when astrology started. But I love what Dr. Hendrik Clark said about the African along the Nile. It was at that point that the African sat down when he decided at this place he could grow food, he could build houses, he could raise his children, his family, and stay in the same place, because this flood, this blessing, was going to come at a certain time every year. He could bet after the calculations from one season to the next that Nile was going to flow. And black folks got busy weeks ahead of time because they knew what was coming, bringing 6 inches of the richest soil from 410 miles away, bringing gold in water and mud. 410 miles, man, that's a long, 4,010 miles. No, 4,100 miles away. Flowing not downhill, flowing uphill. That's the Nile. The font of Egyptian, quote, so-called Egyptian civilization. At that point, the black man and woman could sit down and think. Could sit down and write. Could sit down and figure and measure, calculate, procrastinate, make a prognosis, not procrastinate, make a prognosis. Could expect something tomorrow, next week, next month, next 10 years, next 20. That's when civilization began. Time begins when somebody said, oh, here it is here, that the sun comes up here in the east, not in England, as all the astrology books are calculated to Greenwich Mean Time. We'll get into that. But is found to rise in Madras, India. That's what C.M. Bay brought forward, and the rest of the astrologers hid. And when it got from here to here, it could be measured. And it not only could be measured, damn, I wish I had brought that, what's it called, it reflected on the side of this building. Then when it got here, it reflected on this side of the building. And it cast a deep shadow on the other side. So they could measure it. See? Then they could lay a stick out and see that the sun and the shadow would measure the stick equally each day. Well, it's 24 hours in a day. There's 24 of these between the time the sun rose and set. That's what your parents were doing. See? That's where this comes from. I mean, after Big Ben Bay carved it out of wood, of course. That is not Benjamin Franklin's clock. That's Benjamin Banneker, a black man who made, not that particular one, but it was made in the casement, called the Big Ben clock. Y'all heard of Big Ben's clock? A Moor. Big Ben Bay was Benjamin Banneker Bay. Okay, at these points of measuring, Higgins stated in Anacalypsis it took 40,000 years. Albert, the hell is Albert's last name? It'll come back to me. In Primordial Man stated 100,000 years. A couple of others. I mean, it gets back.
Churchwood.
Thank you. Albert Churchwood. Gets back to 300,000 years of black folks dealing in this science. Then, of course, the European come along and says, it came from outer space. And it might have. But if it got out there, the ones that got it out there came from down here, is what they're not talking about, including your buddy, Dr. Whatchamajig. What's his name? It'll come back to me in a minute. No, the one that talks about space folks and stuff out of New York. Yeah, right. We never forgot about. Yeah, he come out and did all this Eurocentric point of view about outer space and space beings, and he mentioned black folks once, and it turning out to be the ones that came to here from outer space came from here and been out there beyond our count. You know? Well, I don't want to get off. I'm trying to keep us centered here by beginning with the knowledge of self and the people in your world. I said the 12 people. That's all there are. The blueprints are 12. Variations of. Okay, you have it right there in the Bible. The 12,000. This whole concept is in the book of Revelations. The 12,000 tribes, or the 12,000 from the 12 tribes, so to speak. But the blueprint again is setting the standard, the blueprint of human beings. Notice I didn't say men, I said human beings. Because we're so Western oriented, every time we think of human, we think man first, then woman. I don't know, no man is giving birth to no woman. We need to understand that. One of the problems of appreciating your lady, your sister, your mother, and your grandmother is that we don't have enough knowledge about who she is. And why we don't have enough knowledge about ourselves. Because from whence we come is from and through her. That's the whole concept of mother and son. So we're going to deal with those 12 personalities and the forces. We're not going to talk about planets. We're going to talk about energy, because that's what planets do. They send out energy as they gather it in their circular movements in their orbit around the sun. And as this particular sun gets its energy from a greater sun, and from that area comes the spiritual sun, the invisible, and I want you to keep in mind, when we talk about things, objects, we must talk about their correspondence. Okay, because everything, I need some Scotch tape. Everything has a invisible base. Inside your physical body is a spiritual body. Even preachers will tell you that. So inside the planet Earth is a spiritual Earth. Inside the planet Sun, the luminary, is a spiritual sun. But as our planet takes its point of focus from the sun in making its orbit around the sun, as it rotates on its axis, two motions, this solar system takes for its point of view a greater sun. And as we are rotating and orbiting in our ecliptic circle, the solar system is orbiting in its ecliptic circle around a greater sun. And in the field or center of this universe, as the Masters of Perfection teach, and as astrology explains, there is a field of energy that is intelligent. The dynamic force that feeds, supports, sustains our universe. That is Allah. That is Jehovah. That is the great Brahman in Hindu. Any of those great names is an attempt to name something so enormous that the individual can't even figure it out, let alone give it a name. But remember, religion relates through ritual and symbols. Then there's the manifestation of which each one of you are, a manifestation of the universe, a manifestation of God on planet Earth, embodied. A manifestation of the universe. The head Pisces, bent over, the head Aries, bent over backwards, touching the feet Pisces, is the full circle of 360 degrees, and the 12 parts of that body measuring the circle of Zodiac. Okay? That's the language of astrology. The science, the knowledge of self. This is a extracted blueprint of the great day of creation and evolution, taken from the Hindi concept of astronomy, astrology, in relationship to the evolutionary process of this planet and solar system. Everything evolves. I wish to goodness we had a copy of the Kybalion here, because without those principles, this is not going to make much sense. But that's where the superstition gets in, because those that look at astrology do not have the base of what it's based upon. It's not based upon planets. It's based upon universal law. And the 7 cosmic laws of the universe are clearly explained in that little blue book, which the brother will have some here for us the next time you all come. Let me say this before I forget it. Like this, brother, I want you to have a tablet, one tablet, not a sheet of paper that Tuesday you can't find. And if you keep notes in one tablet, you can always go back to your notes. That's when you realize you're educated. Okay? When you look back and say, damn, I didn't know that you knew that. Okay? You can keep up with what you've learned. And that's important because that's one of the ways you measure your growth towards the measure of the fullness of the stature of Christ. If you keep in mind that you're on this path of life to win, and the only way you can win is to become God. That's the only way you can win it. I'm not talking about how much money you can get, how many cars, how many women, and so forth. The only way you can win down here is to become God. Because if you don't do it down here, you got to come back. And keep coming back till you get it done. Because that's what you are. John chapter 10, verses 31, 36, right there in the same Bible y'all been reading and carrying around and Mama been talking about. But she keep telling you about Jesus. See? And what is needed is somebody to tell you about you. That's what self-knowledge is about. That's what Moorish science is about. That's what astrology is about. It tells you about you as God, as a replica of the universe. That's what this knowledge does. If you wonder why so many children are lured into that world of shade and darkness, death and anger, greed and fear, because they have no knowledge of themselves. And it's easy to tell somebody, man, you ought to hook up with Satan. Because Satan rules everything down here. That's what they're telling them. If you're going to run with us, you got to follow Satan. That's what they tell us kids. I'm talking about black kids. You know, like 20 years ago, you'd hear about some group of white kids going in a demonic cult, and we go, oh, damn. You know? We didn't know that black children were susceptible to that kind of trickery, hoodwinking, because they like the knowledge of self. If you are not able to follow your God, you're going to follow somebody else's. You're going to follow somebody down here. Or fall into a derision of confusion as the ones who succumb to drugs. They are not following anybody. They're following their glands. And drugs have overwhelmed their glands, so they are slaves in the real sense of the word. A slave is not someone who works for someone else. A slave is someone who succumbs, surrenders to something else. That's what a slave is. There were some brothers that were caught up in imprisonment of Europeans and fought like hell every day. He didn't give up. Nat Turner is only an example of one of them who resented that bullshit. He knew he wasn't nobody's monkey. And there were hundreds of thousands who knew that. Some chose death rather than slavery. Were certainly courageous, but not wise. But the keys had been removed. So despair and despondency became that cloak that prevented them from seeing themselves in the reflection of nature. These are the 4 great periods of the 20. Let me put this up on the board here. The 24,000-year period of the great day, or great year, as it's referred to, in the evolution of this planet and solar system, moving towards perfection. The whole idea of the universe, of nature divine, is to perfect its creation. Otherwise, death would be a cruel act, and life would be a cruel act. If you die and came back and could not go any higher or further than you did the last time you died, that would be toying with your soul and self. One of the philosophical reasons why we know that the universe is unfolding, becoming, not remaining the same. The only thing that changes or remains the same is change itself. Everything must change. Everything must unfold. Everything is in motion. Nothing stands still. That's the law of the universe. That's the law that governs the mind that you live in, move in, and have your being in, and think in, imagine in, dream in, figure in, that's God. But we're on the subconscious level of that mind. We're trying to get in touch with the supraconscious level where there's no duality, no confusion. The answer to question is direct. The solution is direct. The sight, the view is direct. There's no what if or maybes up there. That's where you want to get. So you're laying in the bed. I remember this was a wonderful experience, and all I wanted was a pack of cigarettes. It was Sunday morning. And I thought to myself, I said, it's Sunday morning, but I bet them stores are closed. Now, what store is open on Sunday? And Euclid Avenue showed up, and then 4th Street this way, and 4th Street that way. The brother know what I'm talking about. Then Ontario, then 9th Street. That's what I saw in my own mind. Because I saw the drugstore on 9th Street. You know, that's the only one open. You know, and it just happened. You know, it wasn't any effort on my part. You know, I didn't do it. It was done inside. But that's your mental potential. See? And if you get still long enough, your own mind and spirit will show you that. You know, you don't have to go to Morehouse to get that. In fact, you can't get that at Morehouse. You already got it. But you got to educare, educate, draw out that which is within. That's what educate means. This knowledge of self, of the universe, of human activity, is a part of self-knowledge and will assist you in doing that. Study of truth unfolds your nature. That's why it must be applied to teach. Teaching touches consciousness. Instructions don't. And instructions affects the subconscious, and you store it away. If you can recall it, you get an A, a 90. If you can't, you get a D, a 50. If you get enough 90s and A's, you get a sheepskin. If you don't, you consider the dummy, and you're not. The misconception of self will make you a dummy, with or without a sheepskin. That's what we're going to deal with. And I'm not going to explain this now. I want to explain it right, so it's too much information. But I want to talk about the fact of evolving, that you're going somewhere. The great experience, one of the great first experiences I had with this knowledge, I bought a copy of the Kybalion and laid down. Because I only had one room at the time. It was in Cleveland. And I couldn't put it down until I finished it. I mean, it was so, I was, if not psychotic, I was paranoid par excellence, because I've been fooling around in left-wing socialism, W.B. Debs Hall, you know, trying to be a communist, trying to find some answers. And fortunately, a brother turned me on to the Kybalion. That's literally what saved me, and I know it did, because that took me towards meditation. But that particular night, after I finished just reading the book, I slept in an aura of blue light. It just came on. I slept like a baby. But I have not had a night's sleep like that in my life. I knew that the universe cared about me, cared about my life. I knew that. You know, and I mean, this is we're talking about a little thin book. This ain't no big book. You know, I hadn't gotten heavy overnight. It was my consciousness that reminded me of something, of what I am. There are three major keys that are missing in black culture: identity, self-knowledge, and self-revelation. You can get some of that in church. You can get all of it from within yourself. Okay? And that's important. If you can get it before you leave here, you get enough of it by degrees, because enough of it will take you from here back to here. Right now, most of us got about 30 of these and a little bit more. College ain't going to give you but one. But it's not to be mocked. We need as many levels of education as we can get. We need them because we need to function in the world. And the academic education gives us the skills to function in the world. But the best education is self-education. The best. Because it gives you yourself. It opens yourself. It arms you with power so that you can really function on all three levels of consciousness. Subconscious, conscious, superconscious. That's how the mind works. And the reason we keep making mistakes is because we're not perpendicular on all three planes. That's the problem. And why we keep getting battered back and forth, left and right. Because we're not in tune with our own God. The mind of Christ is a universal term, not a religious term. It comes from the ancient name Chres, not from Christe. That's Greek. Jesus is not the first Christ, but he's one of the earlier ones because he was somebody before he was Jesus. He was a black man. The brother's got his name on his shirt there. Heru is Jesus. In the Greek Horus, where the concept horoscope comes from. So we're going to get knowledge, and we're going to get understanding. Okay? Now, if there was some other place you could get it from, like I got it, I'd send you there. I don't know nobody that's doing this on the same level I'm doing it. And I respect that brother tremendously, as I do Imam Isa, but they ain't doing this. I don't want to promote myself, but I want to let you know what's here. Okay? And what's on this wall can get you out of some jams that you've been in, are going to get in. If you're dumb, and that means having no knowledge of self, that's what dumb means. You're running towards the unknown. That's blind. That'll get you in trouble. If the sister who got raped on a campus where she would least expect it, that she had any knowledge of the period or cycle she's in or was in, she'd have kept her ass in a dorm room and let them fools go on by. I think one of the worst things that can happen to a woman is for someone to take that which she holds most precious. If she has no self-knowledge, it destroys too much of that which supports her, which is her subconscious. But if she knows she's God, then she ain't lost nothing. She just got roughed up and beat up. Now she's supposed to get up. All of us are going to get initiated by something or somebody down here. If you understand your suffering and your pain, you know it's towards your own unfoldment. If you don't, you're a victim of everybody else who would take advantage of your circumstances and you. But you're going to suffer on planet Earth. You're going to have, quote, some bad luck. You're going to have some good luck. You're going to have some blessings and some things that look like curses. That's where you are. In between the polarity of duality, a law that's fixed, it ain't going nowhere. Some good and bad, some light and dark, some soft and hard, some rich and poor, some hungry and some full. That's where you are. It ain't going nowhere until you do what? Go from here and here, that's where we are, to here. Be ye perfect, even as thy heavenly Father is perfect. That's where you're trying to get to. The top of the pyramid. That's where all this has no meaning for you. And you do it from up here and from here. The heart. Love changes your nature. Knowledge changes your mind. You got to have both. Love and wisdom is male and female in principle. We're talking about astrology as it relates to your human condition. If it don't relate to your human condition, it ain't nothing but fun. If it can change your human condition, then it's science. A working body of knowledge is what nescience means. If it doesn't do anything for you, it ain't nothing but fun. Truth is a synonym for power. Power changes conditions. The first thing it does, it releases you from limitation. You can feel it because you feel better. When you know more, you feel better. One of the most telltale factors of the gaining of knowledge is that your fears diminish. And that's important because when fear is gone, you function better. Many things are released so that they can function. The spark plugs get hot and they fire. That's thinking, thought, and power. It's fire. Okay, let me get some questions from anybody before I get to the next phase of this. Any questions? Should I have some questions? Throw them on out. They don't have to be about this, about anything. Y'all got questions? I know I answered all of them, huh?
East and west. Why is there east on left and south?
Because that's the measuring of up there. We're down here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we look at something, like when you put the map up, you turn the map, the planet, this way. Oh. And that ain't where the planet is. The planet is down here. But we're looking at it this way. Okay? Secondly, when you talk about the measuring of things, you go in counterclockwise. This is the point of Aries, 0 degrees. And you start coming this way, counterclockwise, when you start to measure. When you set up the planets, of course, you're going clockwise. Okay? The belt that we're talking about that's invisible, it's only out there if you can imagine and agree that it's out there 8 degrees from 0 degrees east and 8 degrees 0 degrees west. If you can't imagine it, it's not there for you. It's only a tool of imagination. But it's moving counterclockwise.
This is where all the planets are within this belt?
Right, as we see.
They're all moving together.
Right, as we see this imaginary zodiac. Mm-hmm. Yes, and the planets, of course, are moving east to west. Okay? Clockwise.
Okay, what is this belt called again?
Zodiac.
The zodiac.
Or Zodiacius.
Okay.
Yes. And then when you begin to fill it in, it becomes a horoscope, a view of the hours. Okay? Yes.
You made a reference to the fact that back in ancient times, the Europeans talked about space, space creatures, and all that. If they were up there, they came from here.
The ones that are relevant to us came from here. But there are some others out there.
Okay.
I don't know where in the hell they came from.
Okay, now there were some pictures taken, from my understanding, of a video here that I saw some time ago, where they took pictures of pyramids.
Right. Or the face of, in its angular structure, right, that looked like
There's a towel down.
towel.
On the blackboard, the other one. On the foot of the blackboard.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Yeah. In fact, you can see the same view of the Pyramid of Giza and the other smaller pyramids from an aerial perspective. There was a brother at the festival that Shechem Shek gave that had pictures. This is in 80-something. Pictures of the pyramids from an aerial airplane point of view. And the brother wanted $25 for them, you know. He wanted to. I wanted to get a copy of that. You could see this point of view. I mean, then you really begin to understand pictures are worth a thousand words when you see something that you have some knowledge or gain some knowledge about. what you would see would be like that, but you would see the slant or angle from up above. That's what is viewed from the photographs they got. I think there was of Mars. I don't know. Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure. Yes, okay, yeah. I mean, we're able to lift the shrouds of doubt about this universe and the peopling of our solar system. We live in a solar system. You are a citizen of the universe. Not of planet Earth, not of Atlanta, Georgia, the universe. And the universe knows you're here and is willing to support your cause if it's right. You see? And we need to know that you're supposed to prosper if your thinking is right, correct, true to yourself, intending to do good. The universe will support it. If it's not and it's supposed to be, your own higher self will trip you up at every twist and turn. If you wonder why the bad guys get all the bucks, and I can't get nothing, they also going to get all the hell. I don't know if you brothers know anything about the consciousness that gets locked up in jail. It ain't worth it. The money that the brothers getting and the little fun they having, shit. I mean, you talking about the shown enough devil. Whew. He in there. You talk about going to hell. Boy, no, you don't want none of that kind of money. That ain't worth it. You want something that gives you back the feeling. When you feel inwardly, something in your nature is expressing. You can't buy that at A&P. They don't sell that. The drug boy ain't got that. You got it. Let me express instead of brag. 9th and John Street, 15 years old. I came to the corner and stopped. I'm standing like this, and this little boy, I was 15, this big, walked up to me and said, "Mister, you got a penny?" And my hand reached in my pocket and pulled out my only 50-cent piece and gave it to him. And as soon as he picked it up, the spirit, pow, quickened me right between the eyes. And I had nothing to do with it, And as I remembered back how it happened, that I didn't say, yeah, I said nothing. I just stood there, and my hand did like this, and like this. And the next thing I felt was, pow. And it was refreshing. Now, I had no idea what it was, because I'd only been to church twice, I thought Jesus was up in heaven somewhere gone. I'm saying that what you need is within, but you've got to stimulate it, wake it up, so that it will educare, draw out, come out. Promise yourself you will not leave here a boy. And if you leave at least as a man, master, able, and noble. Don't settle for anything less. Most of our folks are leaving as children, so they're going to come back as children. If you leave here, try to leave here at least with some of them degrees hanging on your plump and level. Some of them, get an M or an A, get something. Don't leave here like you came. Came here, lied to, and left the same. Imam Amir Baraka said in one of his poems. And that's what most folks do. They come here. And the planet's going to lie. Because the ones running it lying. And you got to pull back the curtains of the Holy of Holies. So you can see the truth that will set you free. And if it doesn't tell you about you, it ain't the truth. And if it tells you ain't about nothing, you ain't got nothing, you ain't going to be, that ain't the truth. But if it starts telling you you're G-O-D, then you're on to something. Born in a circle in 9 months, in a solar system with 9 planets, and a mathematical system with 9 numbers, and a circle is 360 degrees and 3 and 6 is 9, then you know you're on to something. You start to make sense from head to foot. But you got to dig a little deeper. What I have on my tapes just took the brothers to the level of numerology and symbology. So what I'm going to do from this point forward is deal with astrology and self-knowledge. So we'll have a complete set of information, because when the good thing about these tapes, you can give them to your kids who are not yet born. You understand? Don't leave nothing for your children. You know? If you can leave a house, that's fine. But if you can leave a closet full of books, that's better. Because if he get in the books, hell, he can get him a house. We got some brothers here with some wonderful houses. And anytime you turn the TV on, you might find out Joe Brown, who earns $250,000 a year, was found dead this morning. Head cut off. Shot in the back. Nobody knows why. What the hell is that? With all that getting, get thee understanding, knowledge, wisdom. That's power. And the black man needs love more than ever now. Got to quote a poet there. Okay, but this aerial point of view gives us a perspective of this replica. Now, it doesn't really matter if they build them out there first and then down here. What matters is that the knowledge of this will tell you about you. That's what matters. Squaring the circle is what you're doing in astrology, in the knowledge of self. That's how you square the circle. This is just a circumscribed outline. You can't really make a circle because a circle has no beginning and no end. And you can't do that with a piece of chalk. You can only circumscribe a reasonable facsimile of a circle, which is the beginning of all things. A black circle, the essence of all things, is black. That should correct something in somebody's head. You know, because we got a real bunch of stuff back here, man. You know, we got a bunch of stuff back there that needs to be erased and corrected. One of the things I remember explaining, if God is light, if Jesus is light, and the light came from where? Where'd the light come from? All right. And the light is beautiful and perfect, and it came from the darkness, then the darkness must be beautiful and perfect. And if you're dark and full of light, you must be beautiful and perfect. That's what you're supposed to think. That isn't egocentric. That's the truth. You see? Because you don't go out and try to tell everybody. And sometimes you can't help it. I remember standing on the corner minding my own Negro business, and this brother standing there and just got through talking to a little bitty kid about Jesus. And the little bitty boy stood there. The little boy asked him for a quarter, you know, so he gets a bus. But the brother had to give him a sermon. He was all full of fire for the Lord. So he gave him a 10-minute sermon till the bus came. And the little boy saw his bus and says, "Here come my bus." And he ran off. Got the bus. And this is a young boy, maybe 18, 19, 20, somewhere in there. Started looking around for somebody else to convert. And I'm standing up and I said, "Oh, please don't come on." "No, please don't come over here." I mean, it must have been 40 folks on the damn corner. Here he comes, right to me. "Brother, do you know the Lord?" I said, "No, brother, I am the Lord." Before I could stop myself, it just jumped out. "I am God." That's what I said, you know. And I started, take it, my spirit wouldn't let me. And he said, "Oh, brother, you really got a problem. You really, you know." I said, "No, you wouldn't say that if you read John 10, 31, 36. You know, your eyes boggle when something hits your brain, your eyes kind of boggle. Oh, let me quote that so y'all know what I'm talking about. I don't want to just quote scriptures. This is not Reverend Biscuit. There's an argument between a group of Jews and Jesus. And the argument begins in verse 31. I have shown you many good works, and for these good works, which one of these good works do you punish me? You being, we do not punish you for good works, but you being a man, making yourself out to be God. And Jesus quoted, does not your scriptures say that ye are gods? And if your scriptures so read, they cannot be changed. Now, he wasn't talking to Jews and Christians baptized. He was talking to knuckleheads standing on the corner, telling them that they were God, and pointing out to the book that they said they believed in. He was talking about Psalm chapter 82, verses 5 to 8. They go on in darkness with no understanding. Did I not tell you that ye are gods, children of the Most High? I didn't quote that exactly right, but it's in there so that you can read it. And there's something rejuvenative about just reading that. It won't make you into a Christian, but it will open something up so that you will know more about who you are, what you are. And that, of course, will carry you towards where you are. And then you begin to gain the revelation of yourself. And that's what the universe wants for you. I don't know what Reverend Biscuit wants, but that's what the universe wants for you. Squaring the circle. The circle squared. Mentioned again in the book of Revelation. Let me do this here because I want you to have a little bit of information in case one of y'all is into biblical reading here. Did I pull out the right cards? I wrote down about 4 passages of astrology in the Bible so that you'd have some reference between now and next Sunday. Luke chapter 21, verse 25. Corinthians 15, 41. Matthew chapter 2, verse 2. Revelations chapter 12, verse 1. Those are some of, just a few.
Go back over there again.
Luke 21 to 25. Corinthians
Chapter 21.
to verse 25. And Corinthians chapter 15. Come on, sit down. 15, verse 41. Matthew chapter 2, verse 2. Revelations 12, verse 1. Now, I'm going to do this. I'm going to read one of these just so you get an idea that the Bible is sprayed, not peppered, with this knowledge of both the knowledge of self and the knowledge of astrology so that you can get... I'm going to just do it now.